Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming for the second Lunch and Learn. I appreciate all of you joining, and we'll start a presentation shortly, but I just wanted to clarify like how today's format is going to go. I just wanted to let you know that the presentation will be recorded so we can share the video later for people who weren't able to join today. This is why the cameras are off, microphones are off. This is just to ensure that we can all just focus on the presentation and the video can be watched later by everyone else. But once I stop the presentation, I'll stop the recording and turn on microphones and video after because we're going to have a discussion and a Q&A if you want to ask any questions. And then that will allow you to turn on the camera, turn on the microphone if you feel comfortable. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can just drop questions in the Q&A section of the meeting or the chat. And I'm joined by two people who are helping me out here today. Alex will be taking care of the questions and helping me out. She's FSG's intake manager and clinician. And we're also joined by Tammy, our clinical director and supervisor. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt at any point. Just note that, if well, the video won't be on, so it's all good. So feel free to just drop any questions during the presentation in the chat, and then Alex will help me out and interrupt me if you have any questions. All right, so we can get started. Before we start, just wanted to give just a quick introduction and tell you a little bit about who I am. My name is Anna. I've been a staff therapist at FSG for almost a year and a half. I completed my graduate studies at Northwestern University at the Family Institute, where I earned my marriage family therapy degree. Due to my training at the Family Institute, and my marriage family therapy background, I enjoy working a lot with clients of different systems. So that means couples, families, siblings. Every time there's more than one person in a room, I just always enjoy that kind of work. I think it's so dynamic and so fun to work with. I also work with individuals, and I work with a variety of age groups from kids to older adults. And I really, really enjoy all that kind of work. I currently hold an associate's license degree, and I'm working towards my full MFT licensure. A little bit of background too as to why I chose this topic. I'm originally from Brazil, and that's where I was born and raised. And I moved to California for high school and undergrad. So, needless to say, this experience I've had living in, those places is nothing compared to Chicago in terms of weather, right? So this is something I've had to navigate through in my own life of like how to navigate through the winter, how to fight off the winter blues, which you'll get more into as the presentation goes on, and just some tools that I learned throughout, the way and throughout my journey here in Chicago that has helped me to navigate through the winter months. So some goals for today. Today we're going to just normalize our shared experiences with the winter blues and provide some tools to get back for you to get back your spark and get back the motivation that sometimes winter can decrease that motivation. So we can get started with the topics. So first, if we want to talk about how to get through the cold months, right? I think we might need to define first and understand the winter blues. This is something that many of you may have heard on this expression before, and it's used to describe the feeling of lower mood and lower motivation that we experience during the winter. This is very universal. A lot of us experience that. Is not something uncommon and doesn't mean there's something wrong with you for experiencing it. It's just something that happens. And I think it's important to just talk about it and normalize, right? Aside from lower mood and reduced motivation, people often experience fatigue during this time and changes in their sleep and just energy shifts. This is a very common experience, and you might be thinking, why does this happen, right? Well, for starters, winter days are shorter than other days, which means there's less sunlight. So it's just a consequence that it might affect our sleep schedules. It might affect our motivation to be outside because there's less sunlight. That alone can impact our mood and sleep overall. And it can shift our routines a little bit, disrupt our routines. And the cold weather and the snow make it more challenging for people to leave their homes. We might feel motivated. It might be even unsafe to go outside. It might not just be even something that we can control, right? Sometimes there's snowstorms, sometimes it's too cold, school gets canceled, or business is closed. So we just might be forced to stay indoors, and that's something that's out of our control. Um, and that can cause more disruption in the routines, right? And it can cause less social interactions too, right? This is something that, the community experiences together. It doesn't affect only one person, it affects everyone. So consequently, that might just impact in general other people's routines and their ability to be interacting with others, right? All of the elements of winter combined with the psychological effects that it can cause, that can cause, like again, I said, a disruption in the routines and lead to us feeling low or unmotivated. I think it's important to understand that this exists on a spectrum, right? Not everyone has the same response for winter, and that's okay. Some people deal with it in a for some people it might be easier, for some people it may be harder, and I think that's also important to acknowledge that it may be difficult. And for some people, the symptoms are more manageable or they last shorter. For some people, it lasts longer. And I think validating that it's a spectrum and not everyone experiences the same way, is also important for this conversation to happen. So, one of the most important things to keep in mind during this time is that an important thing to keep our spark is to understand the power of routine, and that would be my first tool to share with you all today. It's like as I mentioned early, like winters can cause a great disruption in our routines in general. So if we're mindful about creating a routine, we can more we can have more predictability when our energy is lower, right? So this is an important mentality to have, and I guess a goal and a focus to have during this time, because naturally our routines might be disrupted. So maybe being mindful about creating some kind of predictability, some kind of routine to help you with that, can be helpful to know what to expect, to reduce decision fatigue, and to help you navigate through those months. So, like I said, this can reduce decision fatigue, with often comes with trying to make up our minds about what to do. It can lessen anxiety, and it can make it more manageable, and you can have more control over what you can and can't do. This is like this I'm thinking of this as a mindless thing to keep us moving and active. So it doesn't have to be something big, right? Or daunting, or like a big routine that is focused on responsibility, right? Even small steps and even small routines can be helpful and to keep us going. It can be something light, it can be something fun. It doesn't have to be something related to work or responsibilities at home. It can be something related to self-care. It can be something related to connection, all of those things. Um, so some examples can include maintaining a consistent sleep schedule, right? So that means planning when to wake up, when to get ready for bed, and trying to do that around the same time every night. Of course, it's not going to be the same every night. Sometimes we have plans, sometimes things happen, and that's totally okay. But just, trying at least during the weekdays to keep in mind to try to have that sort of routine and expectation of, okay, I'm going to try to wake up around the same time. I'm going to have maybe a similar wake up routine where maybe I drink my cup of coffee and I read for 5 minutes, or I, you know, my bedtime routine is I do a skincare, or I wash my face, or I know I'll be watching like one episode of my favorite show. Like that's something that you can set to have some predictability and to have some sort of consistency in your routine that you can rely on. So if you're feeling low, if you're feeling unmotivated, you know that at night you have that to rely on and you have that to count on and to look forward to. Or in the morning, you have certain things to look forward to as well. So a goal could be to just have at least one fixed activity each day and to strive for small steps instead of perfection. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that idea of perfection and taking small steps in like later on in the presentation. But another other examples can be morning stretches. Like I said, reading for 10 minutes, stepping outside for a brief amount of time. Um, this also leads me to another point, which is intentional movement. Like notice how I didn't say physical activity, because physical activity is, I think it's too much of a pressure of a word and entails kind of like a workout or a heavy workout. An intentional movement, that doesn't mean that. That just means being intentional about moving your body in a certain way. So when we are experiencing this low moods or unmotivation during winter, right? Getting our body moving is really helpful to get that blood pumping, to get it going. And it can be stretches, it can be a walk on around the block, it can be simple like yoga or deep breaths, intentional deep breaths, like all of those things can help with getting us moving and getting us going. It's again, doesn't have to be big, right? As long as we're maintaining a flow, that can go a long way into increasing our overall motivation. This is one of my favorite tools that I can provide today, which is something I use all the time. And in my personal opinion, is like one of the most powerful ones. During this time, I believe that self-compassion and empathy is key to maintaining a healthy mental wellness. Um, just even outside of winter, this is just a good tool to have in general, right? Even outside of winter, just to have self-compassion and empathy with yourself and giving yourself grace in moments of feeling that you're feeling low are really, really impactful. So during the winter, like we've been talking about, right? Already your motivation might be low. We might be feeling a little bit fatigued and not as productive as usual. So sometimes we can be very hard on ourselves, right? Especially if we're going through that period of time. During winter, we can also fall into those negative self-talks, right? Because as a result, a direct result of feeling unmotivated, feeling maybe less productive, right? We can naturally fall into those negative self-talk patterns and just self-esteem habits, low self-esteem habits that lead us into traps, thought traps of, thinking I should be doing more or why am I so unmotivated? And having those negative messages or ideas in our head and thoughts about what we're doing. It is important in those moments those moments of self-doubt or low self-esteem to show self-compassion and empathy. That way you can maybe adjust expectations if needed. So if we're kind of relying back to what I talked about, the routines, right? So if you're noticing that you set maybe a goal for yourself about a routine and you didn't meet that routine, you didn't meet that goal that you were having, and now you're kind of maybe having that self-doubt or you're having that um, just low self-esteem in general, those negative self-talks, maybe that's a moment to think back in those moments and think, okay, let's think back on that routine, let's think back on that goal. Was it something realistic? Okay, maybe it was a hard week. I was experiencing a hard time. So maybe I can decrease the amount, right? Like maybe I can take a step down from it and try something that seems less daunting, right? And just adjust expectations to what you're going through in a certain moment. Um So that's why I highlighted in the previous slide, right, the importance of striving for small steps instead of perfection. That way we don't set those maybe unrealistic expectations that might result in those negative thoughts. So, what does self-compassion look like in this scenario, right? So that would mean if you're having those negative self-talks, if you're having those thoughts of those thought traps, right? Something that you can do is show self-compassion and tell yourself, okay, how would I talk to a friend about this? How would I communicate to my friend? How would I respond to a friend who might be going through the same thing? How would I respond to my child if they are kind of telling me those things and saying that they should be doing more, saying that why am I so motivated? I shouldn't be unmotivated. Like, would I respond if someone else were to tell me that? Um, and allow yourself to rest without judgment, right? Listen to our bodies. Sometimes it's okay to take a break. It's okay to rest and come back to it, right? We need those moments to regulate and to understand and what our body needs, and then come back to it another time.
Can I okay, there's a question on like, once you recognize that you are having those like not so kind thoughts towards yourself or those negative thoughts, what are some ways in which we can redirect them? Like, because we can recognize them, but it can be a little bit difficult to make ourselves stop and reframe what we're thinking. What are some tools that someone could use in that situation?
So to reframe, just to make sure that I get the answer correct. So
It's
what
kind
are
of like
some
to
things?
stop and then move away from that.
Okay. Um, that's a good question. So I think that's the move on to my next point, right? Which is reframe, right? I think a break in those moments, like first of all, you need to acknowledge, right? Oh, okay, I'm having those thoughts. Once you acknowledge that you're having those thoughts, maybe try to understand, okay, what is something that I need? Take a step back and see where that's coming from. Like, why am I thinking that? What happened this week? Rethink about, what happened, and then instead of thinking, oh, I should be doing more, I didn't do enough, that wasn't good enough, maybe tell yourself, it's okay, this is not a failure. I will come back to this. And maybe next week I will feel, I'll be able to accomplish something. And having that empathy and just stopping yourself in that moment and taking a step away from it. Deep breaths can be something that's helpful sometimes, can go a long way, right? And one reframe that I put here an example is like think of winter as a slower season, not a failure, right? It's okay to take things slow. It's okay to have that empathy and just compassion with yourself in those moments. Um, does that hopefully that helps? And if you have any more questions about that, you can let me know too. All right. So um my last, specific tool today is connection. So human beings are social beings, which means that we thrive on social interaction and connection. So even people who wouldn't consider themselves, extroverts, they still need some sort of connection in order to feel a sense of belonging and in order to thrive. That's all of us. And connection might look different for all of us, for each person individually, but it's still connection and it's still, you know, interacting with others in some way, in one way or another. Um, like we mentioned before, during the winter months, our routines can take that can take a huge toll on our routines and just our connectivity in general, right? And feeling connected to others, which then can impact our own well-being. Isolation is normal during the winter, and this is why being intentional about staying connected can help with our overall mental wellness. So now you may ask, like, how can I stay connected? So I know that during the winter, a lot of us don't really want to leave the house, and that's totally understandable and okay. And we can use, in those moments, technology in our favor, right? We can opt to virtual ways to connect with, our loved ones and people around us. They can be an example, phone calls, video calls, voice notes, text messages. Um, we can use technology in our favor to stay connected to the people around us. Um, and a simple check-in, right? Or asking a friend how their day is going to start up a conversation that can go a long way. And it's an important note, which is like connection doesn't have to be frequent or deep to be meaningful. And that's kind of the trend throughout all of these examples, right? And something to keep in mind where it doesn't have to be a deep conversation in order to be connected to someone. It can be as simple as how's your day going, right? What did you eat today? Like what did you do today? Like all of those things can be very helpful in connecting to someone. Um, Another example could be setting up virtual coffee chats or book clubs or just, just in general, a way to connect to with a friend, connect to someone. Can, that way you can stay at home, cozy it up, but still have a feeling of interacting with someone, right? Interacting with a friend, interacting with a loved one, and, a shared activity. Um, Going into that same, trend, shared activities are a great way to remain connected. And that can be going on a quick walk with someone or grabbing meals together if it's safe and it feels okay to be outside. Doing that can be helpful to kind of get out of the house and be with people. I think this is something that might seem, very easy, but during the winter months, that's the time to just be intentional about these things. I think a lot of the times, like during summer, for example, that happens more naturally, and that happens just like maybe sometimes outside of our control, and that is often more readily available to us, like hangouts and moments of connection. But during winter, we just have to think of being more intentional about those things and maybe adapt to different situations, right? And different um experiences that might be going on, right? If it's unsafe to be outside, we don't want to be outside. So maybe we can move something like a virtual connection to someone. So all those things, I think the word is intentionality, right? Another example that I have is for parents, for example, right? Scheduling play dates for your children and their friends, but also schedule maybe play dates in a way that if you're friends with the parents of your kids' friends, you can invite them over. So there's a way that, your kids are having that moment of connection, of, taking and interacting with a friend, but it can also kind of support parent connection. If you invite the family over and you over dinner and, while the kids are playing, you're chatting and all of those moments, I think, where you can have a moment of connection between the entire family can be helpful. And just, yeah, like on the same boat, just not always just inviting friends, but doing family activity together. Maybe that's a movie night, that being more intentional about family time. All of those things can be very helpful to feeling connected and maybe sometimes helping getting out of a certain funk that might they might feel. And like I said, just reiterating, right? Connection doesn't have to be frequent or deep to be meaningful, right? So simply talking to someone or engage in a shared liked activity can be enough to meet the need that we have. With everything that we talked about today, it's important to address that these feelings, might last throughout the winter, and they might persist for longer. So then you might ask yourself, when do I like should I ask for help? And knowing when to ask for help is a very healthy tool to have as well. Sometimes those symptoms or feelings persist longer, and that's okay. And I just wanted to normalize too of that it's okay to reach out to friends, to family, and to mental health professionals if you feel like those symptoms are persisting for longer than the winter, and if you feel like you might need some extra support with that, right? I always like to reframe that asking for help is a strength and not a weakness. It doesn't mean that you're weak or that there's something wrong with you. It just simply means you know strength actually, and just I'm need extra support, and that's okay. Um, and I think that recognizing that during those months can be very helpful to kind of like keep an eye on like what are you feeling and how what helps you and what doesn't help you. Like what are tools that I've used that have helped me in the past, and what are things that, you know, maybe didn't help, and just keep, a track of those things. On the note of, reaching out for help. Just wanted to talk a little bit about FSG, which, we are a mental health agency, and we've been rooting in Glencoe since 1914. And our mission is to help individuals, families, and organizations to thrive by providing mental health and social services. We provide services to the Glencoe community, but also some surrounding communities. And if you have any questions about that, you can reach out to our website, and we have a bunch of those questions probably going to be answered there. Our services include individual or family sessions. We also provide single session consultations and couples sessions as well. We have trainings and workshops um, for different groups like school, communities, book clubs, and for the Glencoe community. We now have started this Lunch and Learn series, which hopefully is a way to get content on certain topics that might be helpful. If you have any suggestions to future topics to talk about, that's something very open to. And we would love to hear, if you have any ideas of other things. Some, last thoughts, and just as a recap of things to focus on and to keep in mind. Like I said, the winter blues and these experiences during the winter are a common experience. Um they're not unique to one person. And that doesn't mean that you are, weak or struggling. It just means that we all experience it, and then that's okay. It's just a natural thing that happens during this winter months. Remember that small intentional choices make a real difference. Remember, we might have to just, take a little bit of an extra push during this winters to participate in activities, to stay connected, to keep a routine. It might be a little bit harder, but being intentional and, low stakes on those things can be helpful, right? And remember having empathy with yourself and understanding that sometimes some weeks are going to be harder than others, and we just have to navigate and adjust our goals and mindset to certain areas. Um, like I said, right, routine, movement, connection, self-compassion. Those are the four pillars of, things to keep in mind and things that might help you throughout the winter. And I leave you with, try choosing one thing to focus on this week, one maybe thing that you'd like to try to add to your routine or to add to your day to day that might be helpful in, fighting the winter blues or getting through these months. If you can take away at least one thing from today's presentation, for like, it did my job, and that's what I did what I'm supposed to do.